Now we'll focus in on my own speciality, which is radio astronomy. What are radio astronomy signals and how do we actually go about detecting them? Well, natural radio signals are pretty much noise-like. If you switch on a normal radio and you tune it away from artificial signals, you hear this background hiss. So what is that noise? Well, in the case of an analog radio, it's an audio representation of the signals that this radio is receiving. What does it consist of? Well, most of that noise, that white noise as we call it, is actually being generated inside the electronics of the radio itself. A small fraction of it is coming from electronic devices, distant radio stations, that kind of thing. There are also phenomena in the atmosphere, natural phenomena which cause radio waves. If you listen to the radio during a thunderstorm, you might even be able to hear the crackles coming from that distant lightning. But some small amount, some small signal is actually coming through from the distant universe. Things in our universe, such as black holes and radio galaxies, are actually producing natural radio waves with that noise-like signal which can be received by any radio receiver. So how do we pick out that tiny, tiny, weak signal from all of the other noise which is going on? To understand how that's done, we'll look at how radio signals from beyond the solar system were first discovered and how the science of radio astronomy was invented. So the first radio astronomer wasn't actually an astronomer at all. He was a researcher working for Bell Labs. They had a radio communications link across the Atlantic between Europe and America. There was a lot of interference on that radio link, and Karl Jansky was charged with trying to make sense of where that interference was coming from. So he built himself a directional radio antenna. It was known as Jansky's merry-go-round. He could spin it around and he could point it in any particular direction and measure how much radio static was coming from that direction. What he noticed first of all was that there were some very clear sources of radio interference, for example, nearby thunderstorms, distant thunderstorms, and they had a very characteristic sound. But he also noticed that there appeared to be another source of radio static, which varied on a time scale of about a day or so. He originally thought that this may have been radio noise from the sun, but as time went on, this source of radio static appeared to be moving away from the sun in the sky. He spoke to his friend who was an astronomer about this, and immediately his friend realized the significance of this. It meant that the source of radio static was not the sun itself, but actually a source out in the distant galaxies. It was fixed with respect to the stars rather than with respect to the sun. After that, Jansky was able to pinpoint in the sky exactly where this signal was coming from, and incredibly, it corresponded exactly to the center of our galaxy.